In a futuristic Japan, where society continuously struggles with the rising number of elderly patients, medical professionals and researchers embark on an ambitious journey of establishing a machine powered by a sixth-generation computer that would make their scientific breakthrough possible. The movie begins with a bedridden old man calling for his student nurse, asking for help as he wets himself and feels awful. He is Mr. Kajiro Takazawa, an 87-year-old dying widower. He lives alone with his clingy cat, but he gets visited frequently by a volunteer nursing student named Haruko. Mr. Takazawa finds trouble in speaking and he cannot walk, so he has a button he can always press whenever there are emergencies. This button sends a signal to rescuers indicating a medical emergency. Haruko calmly tells him that he should not be ashamed of wetting his bed and it is all right. She adds that he should not push the panic button just because he wet himself. It will be a waste of time for the rescuers. She also tells Mr. Takazawa that she comes by from time to clean and assist him, so he should not worry. As Haruko is hanging Mr. Takazawa's used linens, she notices an ambulance arriving. She immediately asks him if he has pushed the button again. It is only for life and death situations. Suddenly, a loud knock came onto Mr. Takazawa's house. Haruko opens the door, and the men quickly go inside without any introduction. They are taking Mr. Takazawa. Haruko quickly bows an apology on behalf of Mr. Takazawa, as he pushed the button again for no emergency reason. The men bring their stretcher down and starts lifting Mr. Takazawa. Haruko protests this and asks what these men are doing. The tall man, Takashi Terada, supervises and heads the experiment. He comes from the Ministry of Public Welfare. He explains that they already have the permission from Mr. Takazawa's family, permission to take him and his participation in the said experiment. He further tells Haruko that this experiment will revolutionize the care of the elderly. While Haruko is taking her classes, her classmate, Nobuko U, approaches her, asking if she had heard about the news, a demonstration of nursing equipment made by the Department of Welfare. Partly, she is not really interested until she hears that Mr. Takazawa will be the demonstration subject. She finds out the demonstration is only minutes away and runs in a dash to the laboratory, where it will take place. There, the demonstration begins and Mr. Takazawa lies steadily on the machine, almost with no life. Mr. Takashi announces this machine will be called Z001. The machine takes Mr. Takazawa's robe off and gives him a bath, then flushes off the water. It has a steam drying feature that instantly gives relief to the patient. The machine is able to perform extraction of urine and feces for patients who cannot stand up on their own. It is beneficial for individuals who have no control of their bladder and rectum. The machine contains a monitor which the patient can use for games, television, and video conferences. The patient will be able to eat and exercise both in the same machine. The demonstration continues and Mr. Takashi mentions the most unique features of the machine. It capacitates detection of volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, fire, flood, and even burglary. It instantly sends a message or alert to the hospital, family, and different government agencies that are needed for the emergency. As this happens, Haruko barges into the room and introduces herself as Mr. Takazawa's volunteer nurse. She recognizes the impressiveness of the machine with all its facilities and purpose, but she empathizes with the patients that will be inside the machines, in this case Mr. Takazawa. She points out that patients like Mr. Takazawa will not be able to receive the love and genuine care they need. Haruko arrives at the hospital where she is undergoing her training. A woman approaches and tells her there is something wrong with her computer. The monitor displays her name Haruko, numerous of them. Her name does not just appear on her computer, but also the other devices around. Haruko becomes frightened and suspicious of what's happening, but they find out the message is actually coming from Mr. Takazawa. Haruko and her friends illegally enter the research facility where Mr. Takazawa is staying, but they get seen by Mr. Takashi and Mr. Hasegawa, his partner. Haruko starts to explain what happened and convinces Mr. Takashi to let them go, but all of a sudden, Mr. Takashi in a robot voice starts to call Haruko and tells her to go home with him. They approach him and try to escape with him, but Mr. Hasegawa reports them to the police. They come into a fight saying the experiment will eventually kill Mr. Takezawa. The machine starts moving and runs Mr. Takashi over. They struggle to fit the machine inside the elevator, but it morphs itself into a smaller one so it could enter. They escape, but their male friend Mida gets left behind as the elevator indicates maximum capacity. They take Mr. Takezawa home and the police follow them. The machine once again helps Haruko when the police tries to captivate them, but Mr. Hasegawa climbs at it and presses the off button. Luckily, they will not be arrested, but the hospital reprimands them for causing a mess. Haruko gets an overtime at the hospital while her friends are at a party. She sees an old man hacking a website and asks him to help her send a message. They try to access Mr. Takezawa's computer system to communicate with him, and after a series of trouble and confusion, they now finally found access to relay a message to his system. Mr. Takezawa wakes up and his nurse on duty gets startled because he is talking alone. She further gets totally creeped out as she hears him communicate with a computer. She runs out of the room and screams for help. As the geriatric patients help Haruko, they come to navigate the form of the 6th generation computer. They find an interesting red light that seems unique to other computer generations. They suspect it is a biocomputer, a computer that is sourced from slimy little blobs of living matter. The doctors, researchers, and nurses gather outside Mr. Takezawa's room as they notice something abnormal. The machine was standing up, forming a robot. Mr. Takashi reveals that this transformation occurs as a feature against natural disasters. Mr. Takashi and Mr. Hasegawa enter the room, and it starts destroying the surrounding. The hospital goes into panic, while the machine consistently becomes uncontrollable. It goes out of the hospital, causing chaos around the city. While this happens, the patient who helped Haruko hack through the computer hears a voice from the computer. The voice comes from a woman asking Mr. Takezawa where to head next. They realize the computer evolved and now takes a personality. They again hear Mr. Takezawa mentioning a name, Kamakura. Haruko drives a motorcycle looking for Mr. Takezawa. She stumbles on a crowd of people with soldiers lining up in defense. Mr. Takashi sees her and orders the military to catch her. Out of the blue, a loud robot voice shouts for Haruko's release and asks what they will do to her. Several trucks try to crash against the machine to inflict damage, but the machine has modified itself to a bigger form and it possessed parts for defense and attack. These parts were obtained as it wandered off the busy streets of Tokyo. Haruko and the machine talk to each other, and she notices the machine's voice is familiar. The machine tells Haruko that Mr. Takezawa is fine and sleepy. Haruko gets captivated by the police, and his friend, Mida, disrupts the arrest. She forces herself inside the helicopter as it heads to locate the machine's whereabouts. There, Mr. Hasegawa reveals that it's actually a military project and the nursing bed was the best test for it. Mr. Takashi does not know about this weapon testing project. The patients from the hospital go into panic when they realize the computer has taken a personality based on Mr. Takezawa's memories. They assume this is her dead wife. The chasing continues around the city, and the machine almost hit a cable train. Mr. Takashi falls outside the helicopter as he tries to save Haruko from falling. He gets saved by the machine, and he climbs the machine's peak. There, the machine reveals that she is Mr. Takezawa's late wife, Aru. She argues that the experiment is useless and it contributes pain to the patients. Yet, Mr. Takashi continues to reason out that they only want to help the elderly. As they went on, MS Aru eventually promises she will go back to the facility if he lets her take his husband to the beach. She wants to make Mr. Takezawa's dream happen. After that, Mr. Takashi finally arrives at a checkpoint where Mr. Hasegawa and Haruko are. He tries to convince him to let the machine pass because it only wants to take Mr. Takezawa to the beach. But Mr. Hasegawa did not get shaken by this pure intention. Instead, he instructs his troop to bring out the Alpha, a combat version of the machine. Z001, Mr. Takezawa's wife, in machine form, sets out for a battle with Alpha, but it breaks its arms and legs. The machine picks up a truck and strikes Alpha, and it sprints in a rush inside the tunnel. Inside the tunnel, the machine makes the computers the military use explode by connecting a wire to Alpha. The machine's body gets a cut on its side and Mr. Takizawa seems to be in danger. The machine puts him down and asks Haruko for a favor, to take care of him. Mita brings a car to rescue Haruko, but she insists on following the machine as the beach is already near them. As they approach the exit, wires cover their car and Mr. Takizawa and Takashi get stuck inside. The patients from the hospital hacking the computer tell Haruko to smash the core chip. It's the only way to destroy Alpha. Haruko climbs the enormous collection of wires and metals that Alpha and Mrs. Takizawa obtained to look for its core chip and bring its destruction. After she finds it, she smashes it and asks Mrs. Takizawa for help. Then, Alpha finally becomes annihilated. Mr. Takizawa finally arrived at the beach along with a beautiful sunset. Mr. Takizawa calls for Mrs. Takizawa, but she is weak and the machine cannot stand up anymore. She apologizes that she can't make it. She's bleeding. After this enormous accident, Mr. Hasegawa gets arrested for insinuating and stirring up an accident from using a dysfunctional computer. Mr. Takashi gets interviewed and gets asked for a statement about the incident. He pushes through with the project and apologizes for the mistake. He says the Minister of Public Welfare's intentions remain pure, to provide quality care for the elderly patients. And in the end, Mrs. Takizawa takes on a new form and invites Mr. Takizawa to the beach once again. The end. How do you feel about this machine adventure? Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe for more anime recaps. Bye.